Mr. Chairperson of this forum, our Chairperson of the African Union Commission, ladies and gentlemen, I had not understood the topic well. I just heard that I was going to speak to people with a lot of money. I did not bother to understand what the topic was. I said that is very simple for me. But when I got here, I found that the topic was intra-African investment and regional economic integration. The few minutes I have, I would not like to spend so much time talking about the intra-African investment opportunities. This is because I don't know how much you know about Africa. Assuming that you don't know much about Africa, I therefore decided to try and help you see the potential for money in Africa. I know you are not philanthropists, you are not Mother Teresa's coming to do charity in Africa. You are coming to make money. And since I also don't come here very often, I thought I should use this time to encourage you to come to Africa and we work together. You make money, and for us, we get investments. Now, what are the prerequisites? In fact, I wanted to restructure the topic to read something like stimuli for growth, investment, and enhancing profitability in Africa. I wanted to restructure it around those 3 points: growth, investment, and enhancing profitability. Because business people want profitability. They want the difference between the cost price and the selling price. Once you solve that, businesses will flock into the economy. Now, what are the stimuli for those 3 things to happen? Number one, as I was telling the Chinese people who were with me in the other room, is market. Somebody cannot produce what he cannot sell. If people don't buy what you produce, you will not produce again. Africa is a huge continent. I was telling the Chinese that you can fit China, the United States, India, and Brazil into Africa, and you remain with spare space. This is because Africa is 11.7 million square miles of land, and your United States is 3 million square miles of land. So it's a huge continent. The population used to be small, and that's a topic for another day. I will not go into that for today. But it has now grown. The population is now 1 billion, and it will go to more than 2 billion in the next few decades. And the population is getting empowered. Therefore, their purchasing power is going up. Our first task, therefore, was to solve the problem created for us by colonialism, which was to balkanize Africa into 53, some of them small countries. colonies for the British, colonies for the English, colonies for the English are the same as the British, the other one, the French, the Portuguese, the Spanish. Now we have been struggling to solve that. What have we done? We have used the regional economic integrations to solve that problem. We are aiming at the African common market for the whole continent, but we started with what we call building blocks. So we have the East African community, we have a common market for Eastern and Southern Africa, we have got SADC, Southern Africa, we have got ECOWAS, West Africa, and we have got the one of Central Africa, Central African countries. But we are aiming at one common market. So there, you already have COMESA, for instance, 400 million people, stretching all the way from Egypt to, I think, Mozambique. I don't know whether Mozambique is a member, but certainly Zambia is. So that is stimulus number one for you. If you invest in Uganda, or Kenya, or Tanzania, or any of these, you are not only going to sell into the Ugandan market, but into the market of all these countries. And in the next few decades, into the whole continent, because we are trying to create a common market for the whole continent. So that is stimulus number one, which is already in place. Stimulus number two is to deal with infrastructure. Your chairperson was worried about infrastructure, but we are handling it. Electricity, the railways, the roads, the ICT, we are handling those elements of infrastructure. Uganda's economy, for instance, has been growing at a rate of 6.5% per annum for the last 20 years, in spite of the bottlenecks in infrastructure. Now that we have solved the problem of infrastructure, the economy will grow at a much higher rate. The third stimulus was correcting the mistake which our leaders made in the 1960s. Many people do not know why Asia went ahead of us, in spite of the fact that in the 1960s, many of the Asian countries were not very different from our countries in terms of growth. One of the main problems was our leaders made a mistake of attacking the private sector. They had some confusion. They thought that the private sector was taking out more money than it was bringing in. They thought it was causing a hemorrhage. So many of these leaders did what they called nationalization those days in the 1960s. I can see many of the people here are young, they may not have heard of those issues. But that was a big problem. That meant the state confiscating the assets of the private sector and making them state properties. In the case of Uganda, Idi Amin went further. He expelled the Indian businessmen who were part of our middle class. Physically, he got rid of them. Now, this was due to a misunderstanding that the private sector was taking out more money than it was bringing in, which was false. If you assume that a company is earning, let's say there is a textile factory with gross earnings of $100 million, even if it is owned 100% by foreigners, by the time the textile factory has paid for the cotton from the farmers, It has paid the workers their salaries. It has paid for electricity, because you cannot come with your own electricity. You must buy the local electricity. You cannot come with your own telephones. You must pay for the local telephones. Certainly you cannot bring your own water. You must pay for the water. And you pay taxes. Out of the $100 million, which the textile factory earned, maybe they will remain with 15%. Where would the 85% go? To us. Now, our leaders did not understand this. This was a big problem. Fortunately, I was lucky. I was a youth behind our leaders, and I was able to observe what was happening and to know where the mistakes were. And when we had opportunity, we changed that. And we said the private sector should take the lead. And many people in Africa have done the same. So that problem of persecuting the private sector, the private sector was persecuted in the 1960s and 1970s. That was one of the reasons why Africa lagged behind. Some people talk of Asia, but they forget that there are also countries in Asia which are still backward because of policy mistakes. If you take Burma, Burma is a very rich country in terms of natural resources. It is much richer than South Korea, for instance. South Korea has no resources. But Burma made policy mistakes. And because of that, Burma is still lagging behind other countries. Similarly, African countries made mistakes, policy mistakes, which we have corrected. So therefore, the third stimulus that is crucial for you to understand what is happening in Africa is the private sector. The private sector has now been emancipated. It can operate fully, and there will be no problem. The other stimulus for your business would be the human resource. If you have got market, you have got infrastructure, you have got the private sector is emancipated, the next thing you need are the human resource to help you operate your business. If they are not educated, you are in trouble. Fortunately, we have done very well on that. In the case of Uganda, the literacy rate is about 80%. Now, we are skilling them. In fact, our problem now is jobs for them. So that one is not a constraint at all. The other stimulus is macroeconomic stability. To make sure that you control inflation, you have got a sustainable debt policy, and so on and so forth. So these are in place. Therefore, whether you are from here or from within Africa, I can tell you that you can make profit when you invest in any of the African countries. There are some countries which have got problems like Somalia and so on, but the majority of the countries in Africa are stable, and many of them have policies like the ones I have mentioned here. Now, when it comes to Uganda, so once you have got these stimuli, then there are the other enabling factors that will help you to do good business. In the case of Uganda, you have got agro-processing. In Uganda, we are not going to invite you to come and grow crops for us. We have been doing that for the last 11,000 years. So we don't want anybody to come and grow crops. No, we grow them ourselves. We have been keeping cows for the last 7,000 years. So we don't need anybody to come and look after cows. You just come and process what we are already producing in agriculture. And if you take Uganda, there is nothing under heaven which is produced. One day I went to a place called Nebraska. Do you know Nebraska, you people? There was a friend of mine who invited me to a place called Omaha, Nebraska. Now, there was a group there called Conagura. These Conagura people, I wanted them to come to Uganda. And then one of them thought he was very clever and said, no, because they process potatoes. These potatoes, which you call Irish potatoes. For us, we have got a better name. We call them Lumonde. Emonde. Now, this man said, Irish potatoes cannot grow 42 degrees, below 42 degrees north of the equator and south of the equator. I said, no, you are not very informed. Uganda, because of altitude, we have got conditions better than the ones of Nebraska. Although we are right on the equator, but because our altitude is high, we can grow better potatoes than you can grow here in Nebraska. So I helped the man to revise his geography. Now, everything can grow in Uganda. So therefore, what we need is for you to come and help us process sugar cane, bananas. We are the second biggest producers of bananas in the whole world. Coffee, cotton, all those things that you can think of, they grow in Uganda, the tropical products and the temperate ones. Then you have the minerals, phosphates, copper, cobalt, nickel. I don't know whether there's anybody from the investment authority here. They should be able to give you all this, or our office can give you all this information. Then we have the phosphates, iron ore, all that is available. You can come and invest. But before you talk about the minerals and the agro-processing, there is the infrastructure which I mentioned. There, you have got very big potential. You can invest in, for instance, electricity, in hydro power, in geothermal, in solar energy, in bioenergy. Any of those you can invest and you will make good money. Then there is tourism. When I am abroad, I get a lot of problems because of air conditioning. In Uganda, we don't have to condition the air. We don't have to cool it or warm it. We just enjoy it as it is. All the year round. All the year round. At one time, I thought I was very smart. And I maneuvered Uganda to be on the CNN. If you look on the CNN, when they are giving temperatures of the globe, Kampala is always there. And the temperatures never change. They are always 22 degrees, 28 degrees. So I thought that by the people watching those, they will come to Uganda in big numbers. But they have come, but not as many as I thought. But tourism is, one time I had a Pakistani general. He was based in Nairobi. He was like a military attaché. And he said that, he came and told me that in Pakistan, they have got what they call health spots, where you go to recuperate and so on. But he said the whole of Uganda was a health spot. Then you have got freshwater resources, freshwater fish. I don't eat fish myself because in my tribe they don't eat fish. But I promote for others. 20% of Uganda is under fresh water. Lake Victoria, one of the biggest lakes in the world, is in Uganda. The River Nile is in Uganda. So the freshwater resources are available. Forest resources. Uganda is part of the equatorial forest. So all those opportunities are available. Then there is the financial sector. That's why we have got a problem. We don't have enough cheap money. The financial providers are still few. The banks are there, but the cost of money is still a bit high. So if you can come and invest in that sector, it will be very useful to us. Therefore, I have this right up here. No, there is the petroleum industry. I've forgotten about the petroleum industry. We have discovered a little bit of petroleum and gas. People, of course, are very excited about petroleum. But for me, I regard petroleum as a temporary factor. It will not be there all the time. Agriculture and tourism are more durable than petroleum. But I don't mind taking advantage of petroleum money to build my economy. So in case you're interested in petroleum, you're excited by petroleum and gas, you are most welcome. I can go on and on. Once you give me audience, you do so at your own risk. But since I've got some other engagements, let me end here and inform you that what I'm saying about Uganda is also true of the neighboring countries. Rwanda, Burundi, Kenya, Tanzania, Congo. Congo still has got some problems of security, but once it settles down, it has got a lot of potential. South Sudan, the Vice President is here, he will speak for himself. So with these few words, I thank you very much for inviting me, and I'm glad I was able to make it in spite of the traffic problems. And I hope to see you in Uganda. Thank you very much.